Okay, I hope you can hear me now better. Yeah, now I think it's
working.
it's great. Let's
Yeah.
wait a few more minutes for a few more people to come, and we'll start our event. I see that we have Matt and Georgia and Shai. Hi, Shai. We have Ma from yeah. We have Arad. We have Nu and Alex and Kate. So hello everyone, and welcome to Bridger Events. We're gonna give a few more minutes before we begin. If you have any questions, by the way, you have chat a chat button on the right that you can ask us anything throughout the session. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have. We also created some polls for you guys. So if you have time, a few minutes now before everybody's coming in, so please answer our questions there so we can know more about your experience in your processing business profiling, and speak about it also in our lesson.
So, okay, I think we can start soon.
Yeah, 1 more minute.
I'll give you 1 more minute.
6, you know.
Yeah. So how are you feeling, Ran?
It's a rush hour.
Rush hour, oh yes. I'm glad I'm not in traffic.
Definitely. Yeah, I think we can start.
Yeah, great.
Thumbs up. Okay.
Perfect. So let me just introduce myself. My name is Daniella, and I'm one of the business development representatives here at BridgerPay. And I'm with Ran now. We're going to host a webinar today. And so we have this series of webinars, and we like doing them because we've been in the payments industry for quite some time, and we would like to share different tips with you guys based on our own experiences, personal and professional, with different clients. So yeah, and today we're going to talk about profiling your processing business. Great. So one of the responsibilities, let's say, I have as a representative here at BridgerPay is understanding what merchants do, their needs, their challenges within their industry they're in, especially when it comes to their payment processing. I'm the first person they come in contact to, and it's really interesting to talk to such a big spectrum, let's say, of different merchants. So before we dive into it more, I'm just going to explain briefly what profiling your business means. And it's about understanding how a business operates in terms with their the structure of the business, their industry, payment processing, and by doing that, you will understand the needs they're having and what challenges they're having in their payment processing. So, Ran, can you please also share your views when it comes to what profiling means in the payments world?
Well, I think any business that building a product, building a website, building a team, right, to operate his business. Usually, businesses don't really think about the processing part so much and so fast in the process, and they usually tend to deal with so many other stuff in the chain. But when they come to processing, the mind is saying, okay, it's supposed to be quite easy. I'll just go open a processing account in the processor that I have in mind, that I know from my country, for my day to day, get it connected into my website and start collect money and start process and sell my goods or whatever I'm selling. So it's not that easy.
No, it's not.
And whenever you are going to your first payment provider, asking to open a processing account, suddenly you get a long list of questions, big Excels, PDFs that you don't see the end of it, lots of documents to submit, lots of details to give, changes in the website you would need to require to do in order to be able to support this payment provider, also to integrate this payment provider into your product, into your website, to your business. So it's not as simple as it sounds. We see many businesses that when they come to us, if they are startups and they're just starting thinking about adding the first payment provider, and they reach this wall and hit this this wall of documents and requirements, and when we meet them, we try to simplify things for them, first of all, by profiling them.
Yeah. So that brings us to why. As you mentioned, it's important because there's such a big amount of different categories that exist when it comes to merchants. You can't put a startup, let's say, and a big established company in the same group, because they have different needs, they have different challenges. For example, a startup maybe is trying to find more payment solutions, whereas a big company might be finding it too hard to manage everything. So here we have a few things, let's say sections, as to why, let me just make this bigger, why it's so important. Now, as mentioned, the categorization of your business impacts your payment processing. The first thing when it comes to connecting to PSPs is to understand that you're not, just because you want a PSP doesn't mean that you can have them. And there is a long process of application. And it's like dating. They can say yes or no to you. And it's important to have some realistic expectations as to what PSPs would fit best for you. What do you think, Ran?
Well, exactly. So you have different payment providers, different methods. Those payment providers are connected behind them and basically operating the processing flow through their acquirers. And each acquirer have different regulation that is complying to. And in the end, when you're coming to open a processing account, you need to have an entity, that this entity would be submitted to those payment providers and be accepted. So, for example, if you have an entity from Southeast Asia and you want to process with a European payment provider, you might find it a bit hard to get a processing account without a US entity. In Israel, we have the same issue with Israeli e-commerce websites that want to process in the US, and the US acquirers are requesting them to open a US entities. We see it in the Arab world, in the same when they want to go to and process in the US or in Europe. So there are different limitations that you need to obey to if you want to work with the specific payment providers and get those payment methods that they are offering inside your checkout. So you definitely want to know as a business, okay, and the beginning of the profiling of your business is to understand, okay, technically, am I able to connect any payment provider? Am I able to connect only specific payment providers? It's already narrowing down your list. And if you have limitations, then then obviously only those payment providers are the one that you can connect. And if they don't give you a processing account, then you are in a real problem that you need to solve. And that's problems that we usually get a lot in Bridger. In terms of methods, you want a specific payment methods in Brazil or in Africa or in the GCC. So to be open to those payment methods, you need a processing account with a local payment provider, which will have its own limitation, and you need to work with them. And obviously commercial. So you could have a few different profiles of businesses, and each one of them would have completely different commercials offers from the payment providers, because that's also a part of the game, right? So if you want to take it and understand how to profile yourself, you first of all need to know what's your needs. Where do you want to process? Where are your clients are coming from? Where is your entity base from? Your bank account? Where is the settlements are coming from or coming to? Because that's another part which is important in PSP's relationships. And that's all of that just before you even go and try to find your first payment provider. We see a lot of businesses, that tried many applications and stopped in the middle and couldn't proceed because there was this limitation. And for some businesses, you really need to, match the right one.
I think that's the thing, especially when it comes to the region. It's not just the geo-targeting that matters, because again, like not all PSPs can process everywhere, but as you said, there's different regulations, like the example that you mentioned, an EU entity is needed for an EU acquirer. So can you please tell us a little bit more as to how can finding the right PSP for you impact your business from doing this process?
Sure. Maybe just before, guys, if you have any questions during this session, you're more than welcome to pass them through the chat. So, look, the application process, like we said, could be a bit tiring and lengthy. We're talking about a lot of documents and details that you need to give these payment providers. And when you really don't know where to go to, it can become a problem. You definitely want to be able to pick the right one, not to go through this process a few times. Pick one that already pre-approved you. So some payment provider that you as a business are already in his scope of work. That's the type of businesses that he's supporting, and you want to know that you are going to those payment providers. Obviously, ones that cater the countries that you are serving, countries that you're selling to. So you want to choose right. You want to choose right not only because the application is long, it's also because there is an integration to do. And when you integrate a payment provider and then suddenly he cannot transfer you the settlements because your bank is not the bank that he needs, and you suddenly need more and more payment provider in order to process, and that's becoming a hassle.
Now, in this slide, actually, we're showing a little bit more about the process when it comes to the application for a PSP. So above here, we see, okay, so the region matched. Probably the region that the merchant was targeting is also a region that the PSP is also processing in. Payment methods also match, commercial agreements, but here we have rules and regulations. So even if it's only one little bit that doesn't match, it can be a failed.
For sure, and the rules and regulation also, you can break them down to many different small parts. Obviously, payment providers wants to know your formation, your entity. They want to know, it's basically the KYB, know your business approach of the banks today, and it gets worse in time, and they want to know more and more details. And that's obviously understood when they're giving you, in the end, a processing account for you to process your clients with. They want to know about the product and about the shipment and about the if you worked before with a payment provider, obviously it gives you a big edge. You can show some processing history. You can show them that you're already approved by another payment provider. That helps a lot. And of course, each website and each business with its own vertical, right? So each vertical can have different regulations that you would need to apply to. Without those regulations, the payment providers would not accept you. So this should be prepared in advance. When someone is approaching a payment provider, you should have all the package ready-made to be sent to different payment providers in order to, in the end, negotiate the commercial agreements, the payment methods that they would open them, the regions that they would be able to process sometimes. Can all be sometimes solved when the rules and regulation part is ticked. Yeah.
I have one more question in this. So obviously, you've been in this industry for years and you have a lot of experience in this. It might be difficult for a merchant to understand how they are fully, let's say, qualified for a PSP. But you can, let's say, tell just by understanding a little bit about their business whether they can be approved or not. So have you ever had a situation where, okay, you thought that this merchant is definitely going to be accepted by this specific payment service provider, and then bam, declined, rejected?
Well, first of all, of course, they never keep surprising us. And it's a learning process because the rules and regulations and compliance is changing rapidly between all payment providers. We're connected today to over 500 different payment providers and methods, and and each one of them has his own set of compliance rules and the profile of merchants that he accepts and the profile of commercials that he offers them and payment methods and regions that he supports. And you want to know that you've been covered. And the relationship with the payment provider is also something that it's starting and growing. The commercials you got on day one is not the commercials you will get after 6 months or a year. It can get better and better. But yeah, the pre-approving of merchant is something that we do here in Bridger for enterprise merchants that use our product. And then what we do is basically submit them to multiple payment providers, just because we really don't know if one will accept or not. So our approach is to submit to as much as possible and see which one of the payment providers will give the client the best, the best, from all worlds.
So I would imagine that this submission of so many applications would be very time consuming as well if a merchant had to do it on its own.
Yeah, exactly. You need to first of all go and understand which of the thousands of payment providers you have in the world is right for you.
Yeah.
And then start getting to the application process, which again, if you go through it by yourself, it could take a few months. That's really, for business that time to market is important for them. That's crucial.
Okay. So as we have covered now how profiling your processing business can link to your payment processing, here we come to a point where we explain a little bit more about the categories that exist. Now, here we have a very general categorization, let's say, and they're linked to industry. So here we have finance, for example, and gaming, which are connected to high risk. Medium risk, we have travel, and low risk, it's SaaS companies. But if you pay attention, we have e-commerce connected to both low risk and medium risk. Now, again, this is just a general categorization. It's not a black and white type of thing. It's not a rule that you have to abide in. There's many more things to take into consideration. So, Ran, can you please give us some examples as to why a merchant maybe fall into a different category from the general outline we have here?
So we try to break it down to three main categories of risk, of high, medium, and low. Payment providers like to look at businesses in those terminologies and categories where the profiles of the business could be allocated to different risk categories. And it's the same, let's say, business, and I could have one business in e-commerce and I would be high risk or medium risk, and you would be a complete low risk business, and we both sell shoes. So, but I'm selling it from, I don't know, China.
Okay.
And I'm selling it to the US, and you are from the US selling to the US. So just by the location, the risk also can arise by the shipment of the product that would go from the China to US, even though you're selling to US, but you're buying from China, your product, right?
Yeah.
But the payment provider don't care because the product is in the US and it gets shipped in, let's say, I don't know, 24 hours or 48, and it becomes a low risk. So
Okay.
e-commerce and is a vertical that can be allocated to a few categories, and we can see that software as a service that that basically process subscriptions. So subscription is us doing the same, subscriptions to like we do for a gym. We do it, and usually even if we don't go, we still pay. And that's something with a low risk, because in the end, when we go and we want to close the gym subscription, they come and tell us, but look, we have an amazing new a new tool and a new club, so you have to stay.
And maybe there's new classes, Zumba, now we have Latin.
They make you stay, and the subscription goes on. So
yeah,
subscriptions are becoming a part of the low risk world. Travel, definitely in COVID time, became medium even to high risk in the COVID times, where basically plane tickets were issued without the plane leaving, and the amount of refunds were enormous. So travel is today a struggling industry that is moving between the high medium risks categories. And you have, of course, the gaming and finance that belongs to the high risk. Payment providers are expecting them to provide regulations and certifications, etc. So that's another layer of requirements from the high risk. And of course, every layer is less and less in the requirements. For example, low risk, you can get a processing account in a complete self-onboarding. So you can go to Stripe and by yourself finish the application online and complete and get a processing account. So, and you have the same in others. But when you go to the next risk levels, it becomes
more difficult, for sure. So as we covered this general, let's say, categories, we move on to the true, let's say, aspects as to what will help you narrow down your PSP hunting, but also narrow down as to in what category you actually truly fit in. So we mentioned industry earlier, and we also mentioned location a little bit. Now, can you give us a little bit more examples when it comes to the location of the merchant? I know about the e-commerce that you mentioned, but maybe more in the high-risk industries. How does location impact?
So location it's from both parts, both from the merchant side, from the business side. Where are you? Where is your entity? Where is your bank account located? And that's one thing that is important for them to understand if it's in Europe or out of Europe. If we are talking about the processing location, so where do they want to process? If it's in India, then we are talking about a completely different set of providers that are processing in India. For high risk, the problem is much more intense because, again, they have the regulation rules and they have different guidelines on where they can sell and where they cannot, with which regulation and with which bank account and which entity. So with high risk, it's much more complicated, and they are prepared for that with multiple formations that could be submitted to different payment providers and work with different regions. You obviously want to know, and the payment provider want to know, and that's a part of your profile as when you go to the payment provider, is if you are a startup or if you're already a business that works with history. Business with history is a business with clients that already are showing trends and showing consumer behaving of processing, and you can see if they have chargebacks, if they have refunds, if how is the whole how is this business is being handled, and you can see all of it from its processing history.
Actually, talking about payment history, now we also get a lot of startups without a payment history. It's not that it's, of course, it makes it harder to find a PSP like that, but definitely if you have a payment history, can really up your chances in connecting to more PSPs than without one, let's say, and especially in the high risk. However, the licensing, the type of licensing that you could have in the high risk can really change that. So in terms of licensing, obviously there's different types of licensing when we are talking about the high risk. Can you maybe elaborate more on the quality or types of licenses, and how can that impact the profile of a merchant?
Okay, so if you speak about the high risk, then and if you take the high risk, so you have gaming and finance, right? Now NFTs are coming. It's the new big thing. And we get these merchants coming into Bridger with, selling a painting or in tens of thousands of dollars. And,
Maybe we should try it.
and we're trying to find them and help them. It's not that easy as it sounds, right? But it's a good example because also NFTs, which is a completely new thing, right? And that is coming now. And you already can finger point this payment provider that are supporting those areas and that are accepting NFTs merchants. And in the end, there is nothing that you really can't process. When you want to process a certain country, it all depends on the commercials that you will get, of course, and the risk the payment providers is taking on you. When you speak about licensing and you break down gaming and finance, so in gaming you can see the Curacao license, which is very popular, and many gaming operators are using it, but it limits them with the payment providers that they can apply to. So payment providers which are large, established, and then let's say with the highest approval ratios across Europe, those payment providers would require you to have a European gaming license, which is something from England or other countries, but they would want a local license to be able to process you and give you accounts. If you go to finance, then you have the CISEC in Cyprus, you have FCA in London, which is much more effective and obviously much more strong than anyone else. You have ASIC in Australia that allows financial companies to process in Australia. So different licensing allows you to work with different payment providers, which are the best in these regions. And that's what you want for your business. To not connect the best means not only process less.
Yeah.
It's to send the client a message that only a part of you would be able to pay with me. The rest would probably get a decline.
Yeah.
And that's a big, that's a big loss for a business that is trying so hard to bring users inside. And in the end, losing them just because they could not finish the transaction. Guys, if you have any questions, you're super quiet.
Very quiet today.
And we don't see any questions from you. Let's see if we have the polls done. Okay. Okay, so we have how many applications have you submitted to payment providers? We see people in all groups, which vertical your business belongs. So we have retail and travel and e-commerce people here in this event. Again, it really connects to any business and any vertical, the application and the profiling of the business. And in every vertical, you can see the sub-profiles inside the verticals. You can see how payment providers are considering different merchants in different terms. The idea of the fact that I'm just going to go and get an account and everything would work super fast and is an idea that must be, really understood. What's the process that you're going to go through? You need to be prepared both in your business and in your documents. And the ability, of course, to integrate and add this payment provider and this API into your website. Let's see if we have questions.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think you're explaining things very well today. We both are. Oh.
Let's see. Alex. It sounds like you ensure that all PSP's requirements for all the merchants are covered by BridgerPay, and merchants are verified and correspond to the different PSP's requirements. Is that the license, what you mentioned? No. Okay, so let's see.
Clarify that. It's a good question, Alex. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah. So first of all, the requirement that payment providers, and we obviously are connected to many different payment providers. When a merchant or a client comes to Bridger and we profile him, obviously we are able to slice and dice the payment providers that are working with us with the knowledge of what we have in our hands of which type of merchants they accept or not, and send this merchant to be pre-approved by the payment providers. Bridger do not pre-approve. We cannot verify. We can send your application to 30 or 40 different payment providers, give you to the table a few different payment providers that pre-approved you with their commercials for you to start negotiating with each one and decide who you want to work with in the end. And the licensing that we've mentioned is Daniella asked about the high risk implications of the applications of merchants. So each merchant in the high risk, if it's on finance, for example, needs to require licensing in order to operate his business. And those different licenses are required by the payment providers. So in order for you to get a processing account. Okay, Alex is asking us another question. What are actually your formal agreement with the different PSPs? Well, we don't have formal agreement with the PSPs. We are integrating those PSPs into Bridger. The idea of Bridger is to give you a neutral background, ground to build all your payments on top. Connect any payment provider you as a business want to connect. This is why we are connecting so many different payment providers into Bridger, I think 2 or 3 a week, in order to give our merchants the flexibility to decide, I have a relationship with that payment provider, I want to work with him, I want to connect him. So of course, Bridger would not be the one that will tell you yes or no. So the idea is to give the flexibility to our clients and be completely neutral and agnostic.
And also to add to that, it's very time efficient because, again, we do deal with clients on the daily. We understand in much more the requirements that the PSPs look into when it comes to approving your note. Not that our opinion is certain, not at all, but we understand what they're asking for. And the whole process of the application of connecting to different PSPs, it's much faster. And that saves you not only time, but resources.
Yeah, but that's again also something that everyone can do alone.
Yeah.
And apply to payment providers. Like we said, there are payment providers that are completely no touch today, and you can finish an application process in a few minutes. And there are payment providers which will require you more details. You can see in our website different payment providers categorized to verticals and regions, and find different options for you to connect by yourself. So I hope it answers your question, Alex. Guys, if you have more questions, we'll be happy to answer. Alex is asking us something else now. Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Now, actually, back to the slide, one thing we didn't cover was the website, which is actually very important. Now, our world is becoming more digitalized, you could say. Everything is about the internet, and so are our payments nowadays. So it's really important to have a website that's nicely designed, because like in a physical shop, what will bring you into the shop is the window display. The window display is your website. And it's important to be very clear, because that's also something that PSPs will look into. And especially talking about the high risk now, other things that the PSPs require for you to state in your website, like the regulations or documentations, these are things that are very important to include in your website.
Terms of use, many things. Obviously, like you said, it's your window, right, to your business. But we also see on a daily basis the businesses that are starting, right, and they're coming to us and asking for help in processing. And when we start asking them, okay, so what's your website? And no, it's not built yet, it's in process. So when you go to a payment provider, he will tell you, come back to me when it's ready. So payment providers wants to see the product, wants to see what you sell, wants to see the process of the selling, the shopping cart, the checkout. We obviously, the PCI, if it's relying on the PSP, and you are embedding a PSP iframe in your website or redirecting to a PSP payment page. So the PCI is also a question that you need to know and handle. So of course a website is a must to have, and not just the website, the flow of the sale, and like we said, the whole thing. And beside that, the privacy policy, the terms of use, the different company details, address, contacts. So all of that needs to be in the website. They are looking for it. So that's one of the things you want to have before you submit.
For sure. Because this will truly capture what your business is about. Think of it as your voice to the PSPs almost.
Yeah, they need to see what you said.
Yeah. So, is there anything else that you would like to discuss in this slide, Ran?
No, I think.
No?
Okay. I think the most important thing in the profile will be the industry, and the industry that you work, and if you are established or a startup. So these are the most important things when you want to profile. The rest can be solved with different payment providers. So if you don't have the entity that the payment providers are looking for, then there are other payment providers that can accept this entity and work with you. So everything almost can be solved, but there are a few things which are important for you to have. And if you don't, then again, it's not like if you're a startup, you won't be able to process. You might be paying more than an established business that can negotiate his terms in time.
To add on the startups, when the biggest difference, obviously, small and big companies, is about how, I guess, how big they're, how much worth their companies is on, and it's very important for merchants to understand that there's the scale of their business also matches the scale of the PSP that they could potentially match to. Of course, there are exceptions, but if a PSP is too big, then maybe it's time for you to move on a different batch until you reach to that stage.
Yeah. So, size can be size of a payment provider can determine a lot of things, especially the complexity, especially the type of and the profiles of businesses that he will accept. From one side, huge PSPs can accept multiple amount of merchants and be amazing in what he's doing, but he will still say no to many others in many countries that he doesn't want to accept and doesn't want to take the risk and don't want to take the risk there. Let's move on to the next slide.
So it's just Q&A now.
The questions. Yeah. Wow. I don't see anyone here is raising their hand. Guys, if you have any questions, please let us know about your experience with payment providers, your experience with applications, requirements, weird requirements that you had from payment providers. Because we are keep learning all the time about new requirements and
or maybe requirements that don't make sense. So maybe we can explain as to why they make these requirements.
Yeah.
So feel free to just pop in a question.
No, I think
maybe we covered everything.
Okay. Well, correct. Okay.
Cool.
Good. So thank you.
This was I think we're coming to an end of the webinar. Thank you all for joining us today. It was fun actually to talk about these things and give you guys a better insight as to why these requirements are being set. And
so many businesses you speak with, so many businesses you speak with every day.
I know.
And
big variety.
So many profiles.
Every merchant is different, and I think the one thing that I understand from my job is that there's no two merchants alike. No. There's even a little bit of a difference. It does impact.
Exactly, and it's so important that businesses needs to understand why we ask all these questions. It's not because we want to know; it's because we need to, and it helps us profiling them in the end.
Helps us, but also help them in return in understanding how we can actually help their needs and challenges as well.
Yeah.
So.
Good. I hope we gave you some value in today's event, and if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer later on in our channel as well. We're gonna post that event in our website on the Learn section, and You will be able to view it again if you need. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Shai. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, everyone that joined us. Thank you, Daniella.
Thank you, Ran.